Record. Good morning, everybody. This is another SFMA Safety Tip of the Week brought to you by Carpenter Security Integrators, the Palm Beach County. Carpenter Electric also is one of our dear members. I would like to now introduce the chair of our safety committee, Martin Perrone, who will give an intro of this topic and also introduce our presenter today. So Marty, the time is yours.
Thank you so very much, Matt. Ladies and gentlemen, as the sales operations manager here for Carpenter Electric, I'd like to introduce you to our CEO of Carpenter Corporations, Mr. Rick Seymour. Rick, please share your story with us.
Thank you, Marty, and thank you, Matt. It's really exciting to be with both of you today to share what we're continuing to do as companies to help all of our members of the Manufacturers Association reopen and continue safe and reliable business in phase one and beyond. CSI Palm Beach and Carpenter Security and Carpenter Electric, we've been around since 1982. We're committed to the community, and we're very proud to be members of the Manufacturing Association. What are we doing to help our community reopen? Well, first of all, what we are looking for is any business that is challenged with the CDC guidelines to comply with as we move forward in phase one and beyond. One of the CDC guidelines that has been recommended is that you minimally check your employees, if not also your vendors and customers that enter your building, for an elevated temperature. The CDC guideline suggests that if someone has an elevated temperature of 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, they may, and I emphasize may, be infected with the virus and may be contagious. So we're talking to all businesses in our area to be able to help them open safely and reliably. Well, how is it that checking for temperatures of your employees or vendors going to provide reliability to your business? Well, think about it. If unexpectedly you have a vendor or an employee that is infected and contagious and you're not aware of it, and it infects your employee base, you could have another shutdown that's forced by health issues, not necessarily the government, which we just got out of. So there is a reliability issue as well as a health safety issue here that we're addressing for the members. So how we go about doing this is really important, because one solution doesn't fit all. And we really have to start out by asking questions as to how each individual business is planning to best protect the employees for a phase one opening. Specifically, we are interested in how they're planning to monitor the temperature of their employees, vendors, and customers. And then we get into a very interesting conversation as to what is the process going to be if you find an employee, a vendor, or a customer with an elevated temperature. That's a very interesting conversation that may not have been fully thought through by a business. So we sit and talk about that. We don't have the answers. There is no set answer as to how you handle the situation. We've been talking to several of our customers, and it varies from we send them home immediately to we retest them 15 minutes later, and we retest them 15 minutes after that, and after 3 tries, then we send them home for 14 days. Some of our customers and prospects are actually saying, hey, listen, we're going to do this for our employees, and we're going to use this as a marketing tool to ensure other customers or vendors that visit our site that we're taking the necessary steps that our employees are safe so they can feel safe coming to visit us and do business with us. And they're not attempting to take the temperature of guests, if you will. because they don't want to infringe upon a guest asking them to leave. They do, require guests to perhaps wear masks and, of course, socially distant, but they are not taking the temperature of guests in some applications. Some applications, they're doing everything to guests and employees. So it really varies, but the conversation is important to have to see if what we offer provides a fit. The other thing that comes into play is, how many employees are you screening? How many vendors are you screening? The transactional volume is going to matter as to whether or not you can justify making an investment in this service. If they are currently open and they are doing the testing, what are some of the problems that they're having? Will this help them mitigate a problem that they're having? And of course, what helps justify this, because of the volume of people that need to be screened, there is a time element that's being spent on providing this testing and this monitoring for elevated temperatures. And of course, we always want to understand what other solutions that they're considering, and there may be a better solution for them than what we have to offer. So how are we helping manufacturers and industrial type businesses? Well, you got to think about the fact that you got people coming in a warehouse entrance. You could have a cafeteria on site, the office building lobby, the loading dock. Anywhere you're going to have several people congregating or passing through what I refer to as a choke point is a consideration for putting one of these services in place to monitor for elevated temperatures. The key benefits is that this is highly efficient. When you try to scan an individual, if you have a group waiting to get in, time is money. And this allows, as you'll see later in the presentation, that this technology can actually detect the temperature on up to 30 people at one time. So it's very, very efficient. More importantly, it's contact-free. Think about it. If you're going to assign an employee to take the temperature of other employees or guests, how are you going to protect that employee? Are you going to have them suited up with PPE? Are you going to take a clerical level employee and give them that responsibility, which may or may not be considered more hazardous than their typical clerical responsibilities? A lot of questions that are really unanswered right now because this is so fast and so new that you really have to think about whether or not you want to expose an employee to the risk of coming in contact with somebody that is contagious and infected. So, the systems and the service is highly customizable. It can be, standalone or integrate with their HR systems. There's a variety of ways of doing it, but it's all about thinking about how are you going to do it and what are you going to do if you detect somebody with an elevated temperature. So basically what happens is that any one of these checkpoints you push people through, there's a camera and there's a temperature reference device that's installed. And if you walk through that choke point and there is not an elevated temperature, you're fine to go about. If you see that somebody is, with an elevated temperature diagnosed by the system, then you have a procedure that you put in place, a standard operating procedure that you have that person either leave immediately or go and get tested by another device with somebody that's qualified to do that testing and protected while they do that testing. So I'm going to run this little video here that kind of shows just how it works.
That's amazing.
Now, Dahua is just one of the manufacturers that we represent. Hikvision is another manufacturer, FLIR, Honeywell, Mobotics. There are several manufacturers that we have access to. Each of these manufacturers' product addresses the basic function of the system in a similar manner. It depends upon the particular application, where it's being installed, whether or not it's being integrated with another system that's already in place, that we can make recommendations as to which manufacturer's solution is the best one in each case. So let's just talk a little bit about how it saves time and money. Again, we talked about the fact that, you know, your return on investment is just basically if you are doing enough manual readings more efficiently and more safe, okay, you're going to save time. This example here is, you know, if you had to process 5,000 people through a choke point, if you were doing it individually, you've got 3 seconds per person, you'd be spending 4 hours getting people through that choke point. Here, you can get everybody through in less than 3 minutes. So that just goes to show how, you know, you save time using this technology and service. How do you justify the investment? Well, you have to think about whether or not you may already be spending the money if you are manually testing for elevated temperature. Let's take this example. If an employee, and focusing on employees, which I think most of the customers that we have now and prospects that we've talked to now are really focused on employees first. You know, your employee is getting paid. So let's just take the example that if they're all queued up at shift change and they're standing around waiting to get scanned, let's just say they waste 2 minutes in the process for the 21 work days in the month. Well, you've invested 42 minutes of payroll for that employee. So if we just take, for example, a fully loaded average of $25 an hour with benefits and taxes, et cetera, that's $17.50 a month you're spending per employee on manual scanning in this scenario. These systems range in price from $10,000 to $25,000. That is dependent upon how sophisticated the application needs to be and whether or not it needs to be integrated into an existing system for things like facial recognition, et cetera. The base systems to be able to efficiently and safely detect the elevated temperature of groups of people coming through a choke point start as low as $10,000. And if you're financing it, you're looking at about $230 a month. So therefore, if you have 13 employees, the investment on a monthly basis is going to cash flow neutral on the simplest of system, the basic system, and even the most sophisticated system, you'd only need to be processing about 33 employees a day to be cash flow neutral. So the question is for all of our members is, you know, how do you see this solution working at your business or even a client of yours business? And, you know, the next step for you, allow us to come out, doing a site evaluation and see if we can even be of service helping you out. So with that, Matt, I'll turn over questions to you.
Great. Thank you, Rick and Marty, for bringing this to attention. That's a pretty cool, when you look at it, you can scan numerous people at one time. It's a really great application. Are there, if you can maybe share, I'm not sure if you could share company names or not, but you know, some other companies that are using this currently or those that you're working with, maybe the size of their companies, where they're at, what industries they're in. If you could say names, you know, obviously maybe for privacy issues you can't, but anything you can share with our members in terms of, you know, the right profile for this.
Well, the right profile, we actually installed our first system yesterday at a luxury resort that has many employees, and they are focusing on the aspect of making sure that their employees are healthy and safe, and they want to be able to market to their guests that that all of our employees are being screened for temperature on a daily basis, and they're not having to spend that, $17.50 per month per employee for the hundreds of employees that they have to do it. So that is one application. The hospitality, country clubs, we're talking to many of them. We haven't installed them yet, but many of them are moving along in that direction. We have an appointment with a logistics company that's very interested in this application for their logistics warehouse and shipping warehouse. We also are talking to schools and universities that are very much interested in the application. Basically, I would just say that the rule of thumb is that if you've got 10 employees or more, this may be an application for you. And it's worth having the conversation just to kind of discuss in general how you're managing elevated temperature. We're happy to share the things that we learned by going out into the community and reviewing these processes with other leading businesses to be able to share, best practices, if you will. We're happy to come
this also, this is a great, option for some companies. As we, in the SFMA, we had a group of manufacturers get together and were charged as a task force with giving recommendations to the mayor of Miami-Dade County on how to either safely continue to operate or reopen or bring people back, right? A lot of manufacturers still remained open. They didn't shut down totally, but I heard from a few this morning, they're actually now bringing some of their staff back and other things. And some had to reopen, but this fits into kind of that phase and approach. What do you do with your vendors that are coming in, your entrants, whether it's employees or customers? A lot of recommendations are got to have some type of protocols you mentioned on by which you are screening, whether it's a questionnaire or by this thermal processing. So it fits kind of right into what we're saying is the next steps. So for a smaller company too, Rick, that may not be able to afford to purchase this equipment, are there any options, other low cost options to maybe lease the equipment from you all or anything like that can maybe reduce some of that financial expense, especially to the smaller manufacturers?
That's a great question. The systems that we're promoting in our applications, like I said, the lease price is going to be about $230 a month for a system. So they've got to be able to justify, hey, if we don't do it this way, then what are we going to spend doing it another way? And that's where that threshold of 10 to 13 employees really makes sense, that if you're scanning 10 to 13 employees, you're probably spending the money anyway.
Right.
Less than that, then you can look at other methods. You can get a good thermometer to scan individually if you only have 1 or 2 employees. They run anywhere from $150 to $500 for a one-time purchase.
Gotcha.
You don't have the luxury of being social distance when you're doing the screening. You're going to have to then make the decision as to how you're going to protect the employee that's doing the screening, because they're obviously coming within 6 feet of of every person, whether they're infected or not.
Right. Yeah, and it presents a lot different options for companies, right? If you're not big enough to afford something, but if you are, this is a great avenue for it. No, that's good. Marty, as the safety chair for the SMA Safety Committee, anything last minute thoughts you have on this, from a safety aspect?
Well, let's face it, the bottom line for any company is that they need to make sure that, that they're doing everything they can to mitigate the risks,
right,
that that they're generating or that they're forced to have to mitigate for their employees and for their customers and vendors. And this seems to be a very viable way of making this whole transition a lot quicker and easier.
Yeah, especially.
I have a question for Rick, though.
Yeah.
Rick, let's just assume for argument's sake that I'd like to do this today, how long would it take for me to get these installed?
Right now, the manufacturers can ship within 7 to 10 business days of an order placed, and we can get something scheduled, within that immediate time frame upon receiving the order. The installation, depending upon what the complexity is, but the base installation can be achieved in about 2 days. The first day to set it up, and then the second day we have to come back in and fine tune and adjust the system. There's a couple of challenges that these systems have in dealing with environment. The preferred environment is a controlled one that doesn't have large fluctuations of temperature, humidity, or wind. So that's why the site visit is important. This is so new to everybody from a standpoint of applications here in America. We have a lot of outdoor venues or outdoor entrances that we're trying to figure out if we can come up with a solution. Think of a baseball stadium. They've got gates outside that they're currently scanning for, metal detection and weapons. But they're out there in the open air. So do they need to install climate-controlled air-conditioned tents as a part of their entrance to be able to first screen for elevated temperature before they pass to the metal detector? These are some of the questions that we're working through with stadiums right now. So it's an evolving process. These systems have been in place in Europe and in China for a while because obviously the virus spread dramatically in Europe first, and so now we're just responding to reopening now. So they are proven, they do work, but there are limitations, and that's why each application has to be looked at carefully to see if this particular service is a fit.
Yeah. Very good. Excellent. Well, Rick and Marty, both, thank you so much for your time today. This was very enlightening and a great option for some companies to choose from. So we appreciate you bringing this opportunity to our membership.
Matt, we're proud to be members of the South Florida Manufacturers Association, and we're always at your service.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Marty. Again, this is one of the safety tips of the week and resources brought to you by the SFMA Safety Committee. And again, thank you to Marty Perrone, who is the chair of that committee, for spearheading this effort. This video will be produced and put on our YouTube channel for the Safety Committee for all those that can view it. And we look forward to hearing your thoughts. And if you need to get in contact with Rick or Marty and you don't have their information, we will provide that to you. So thank you again. And for those that will be watching this, thank you in advance. With that, we will end the recording.
Thank you.